Heaven is not earth. God is not man. Aren't you delighted already by what you can see in that simple opening statements? Heaven is not earth. Now you know what earth is like. You live in it and suffer from it. And since there's something else besides earth, which is heaven, then heaven must be the exact opposite, something different from what earth is. Don't you want to get in the spiritual spaceship and take off right now? What is it in you that prevents you from taking off? Simple. The love of this world, because that's your nature. Your nature and this earthly nature are the same thing. And since when does the low and the uneducated and the ignorant and the squalid, since when does that ever aspire to anything above itself? Never. You have got to enter your own life in a new way and understand what I just said. You're consenting to living forever in everything that is bad for you. And so you think that hiding out from the facts is the intelligent thing to do when it is. There is nothing more stupid. Awareness of stupidity is essential for the beginning of a new kind of intelligence where you just want to take off. You don't care who you lose out of your life. You don't care what promises and rewards and companionship and comfort they promise you. You've had it with their promises. They promise one thing and deliver another. They promise a pretty gift box all wrapped with ribbons, and they give you emptiness inside. And you don't know where to go to get something that is rich and full on the inside. I'm going to tell you about it. We'll start off by asking you a question. First of all, how many of you have ever done anything bad? We have to get that established first. How many of you have ever done anything good? That's a little harder to think of, isn't it? How many of you have deep, dark secrets, huh? You don't want anyone to know about? And even you, when you think about them, you jump with embarrassment over it, huh? Me and that? Yeah, I'm afraid so. Come on. Let's get real frank and sincere and self. You know that little sneaky thing you once did? Pull it out of your memory. You got it? See, you don't want to look at that because you think that that's you. I'm telling you it's not you, and you think it is, and you've been suffering uselessly, needlessly for all these years. For all these years you didn't have to pay the price, but you did because you weren't interested in solving the mystery of yourself. All right, now that you have in mind some of these evil deeds of the past, and you think you've concealed them from everyone, just suppose that you heard that someone knew all about you. Everything you've done, you know, those tricky things. They knew about it. And by the way, you have a certain attitude toward your parents, don't you, that you don't like to talk or think much about, because they know a lot of secrets about you, don't they? Makes you uncomfortable to think that your parents are there and they have that knowledge sitting in the same room. Hey, they can think about that time I got caught. Now, I made you aware of that, and you be free of that the next time you think about your parents. But you hear that someone knows all about your secrets that you thought you'd concealed. Ooh. You're going to worry now, aren't you? You've heard, they know those 9 or 10 things, not just one, but all of them, the 10 worst. You're not sure how they found out, but they do. That one person knows. Oh, now you're worried, aren't you? Are they going to expose me? They're going to blackmail me. The very fact that they know is a threat in itself. Because you have an awful lot of people, there's a lot of people who think well of you, and if this person should go around and talk about you and tell them what they know, your friends are going to go away and you're going to lose a lot of so-called values in your life. So you're really worried sick, right? What if they should expose me? And by the way, this isn't just a hypothetical situation, it's a real one. Can you look at that and see that you do fear being caught out of a role? That makes it easier for you to understand, doesn't it? You have your certain ways of behaving and talking, and you slip sometimes. What made me say that? What made me do that? Well, anyway, you discovered that this person knew everything about you, and you felt, of course, you were enraged because now you're at his mercy. What does he want from me for his silence? And then a miracle happens. And we're talking about a spiritual miracle. I hope you see the parallel between the story and the higher application of it. You discover something is the most marvelous discovery of your life. See, you were worried about the nature of this person who knew all about you. You found out he had a nice nature. He is going to expose you, make you feel bad, or attack you. As a matter of fact, this person who knows all about you is going to assist you to get over your guilt and your shame and your concern over the past and your worry that you might repeat yourself in the future because that's all you've ever been doing. You draw a deep breath of astonishment. That man who could have condemned me and wrecked my life, he's not like anyone else I've ever known. Oh, and wow, am I glad of this? He's not like me. Because if I knew some secrets about others, I might gossip about them at least, or I might try to get something from him in order for my silence. I might do it in imagination anyway, whether I'd confront him or not. What is happening that I have run into a human being who is not going to hurt me, but going to do the exact opposite. He's going to help me. And he does. Friend comes over and he understands. He's a man of understanding. He says, I did know these things about you. And I knew that you were very much concerned and that I saw you avoiding me once you found out that I knew. But look, please understand. Let's have a little talk. Let's go over it. Just two friends sitting here together. I know everything about you, and my only purpose in talking to you now and in future conferences is to get you over feeling bad about you. And the very act of this unexpected kindness, this revelation that he's not of earth but of heaven, that very revelation, you will never be the same man, never be the same woman again. Because now you understand that there is another way to behave. And this is what we're talking about. God is not man, heaven is not earth. There is something, and you're not quite sure what word to use, whether it's God or reality or cosmic force. But it's getting clearer to you that you yourself have made a mistake in not investigating to see, now the spiritual part of it, to see that God exists. And his nature is not my nature, not the nature of your neighbor. It's something else. And what have I been doing? with my days. Isolate 1 hour of today. And it's a tragedy. It's a waste of your energy, life, if during that 1 hour today, it's a waste if you didn't think, how could I make contact? And you know why you didn't make contact, because you were afraid that that other person was like you, and you know what you're like. You don't want anything to do with him because you don't want anything to do with yourself, but you don't know how to get out of it. Tomorrow, let's say from 10 to 11 this morning, you're walking around like a dazed zombie. That's a double deal, dazed zombie. It's pretty bad to be a dazed zombie. Either one is bad enough. But you were wandering around, going about your business. Why didn't you think? Why didn't you think to think about the fact that heaven is not earth, and these earthly difficulties that went through your mind between 10 and 11, financial, romantic, boyfriend, girl, anything. Why didn't you break through 10 seconds of that 1 hour from 10 to 11? Why didn't you break through for 10 seconds to realize that you were in the wrong place? You were on earth altogether. Not even looking up to see if there's another place, and this is what you have to do. Oh. What stops us? Let's see if we can find out. This box of glue that we pour over ourselves every day that keeps us sticky, that prevents us from walking to freedom. It has to do with absurd ambitions. Write that phrase down somewhere. Absurd ambitions. You want to know what an absurd ambition is? Any ambition you can think about. What's your ambition? You come on, go into the talk now. What do you want? Who do you want to meet? What do you want to get? What are you trying to avoid? What's an absurd ambition? Any ambition that you have is always absurd, ridiculous, because it's based on the false premise that there is someone there who needs something from this earth. You really believe that you need something, and you do that because you believe in the earth, and you are the earth. You're believing in yourself, and you think you've got to have what you think you've got to have. We're not talking so much about the utterly super ridiculous, absurd ambitions of gold and glory, but that certainly enters into it, but far more subtle ones. Clinging, listen to this, how's this for a ridiculous aim? And if you think you don't have it, I'm telling you that you do have it, and I want you to become conscious of it so you can be free of it. You want to cling to the wreckage of your life. Well, that's an apt phrase, is it not? That's all you have is wreckage. You don't have anything at all that's noble, that's pure, that's true, that's honest, that's in self-command. Just a wreckage, and you cling to it for dear life, which is not life at all, like man falls off a boat, or the boat starts to sink, and he clings to the bit of wreckage around it. And wouldn't it be ridiculous for him just to hang on to the bits of wood that he finds out there? Hang on to that instead of looking around for the shore to swim to. That is humanity. Hanging on and bewailing your fate. Yeah, now, I want to interrupt that little illustration by telling you, under no circumstances, no conditions, are you ever justified in complaining about anything. There must be absolutely 1,000,000,000% no complainer existing inside of you, because that's part of the wreckage, part of the false self-structure. A pretty demanding task, huh? To never again complain, and get your own synonyms for that. Crying out, wailing through life. What would your life be like if you didn't complain anymore about anything, which you won't have to do if you really understand it? The complaint is there because the complainer is valuable to you in a false way, which again is a part of the wreckage of your life. If your spirit was free, what would it have to moan about? Where would be the groanings if you have everything that heaven has to offer, which you can have? That's not too much for you to accept. I tell you, you can just accept it now. That it can be your destination. Clinging to the wreckage and crying because someone sank the boat, what good does that do you? We're here to learn how to do good things for ourselves instead of bad things, and we learn that by knowing what the bad things are, which is clinging to the wreckage and looking around, hoping that someone's going to come along and rescue you. They can't rescue you. Nothing on earth can rescue anything on earth. Prove it for yourself. Just look around. There you are, clinging to the few piece of lumber that fell off the ship. Clinging to it. Take a look around right now. What's that man over there doing? He's looking around at you. That woman over there. All of them in childish, conditioned, acquired, stubborn dependence on someone else doing what you must do for yourself. Only you can save you. You'll never be saved unless you know that. No more looking around for strength, for wisdom in anything or anyone, any source, whatever. It has, look, you have to swim to shore, right? If you have to swim to shore of yourself and quit whining about being isolated and lost out in the sea, the rough sea, if you have to swim to shore, that means just one thing. You have to swim to shore. Then what's the point? What's the point of looking around for any kind of absurd ambitions, whatever? And I'm going to tell you the one ambition that is the foundation for all the rest. When I say it, I want you to look inside yourself and admit that it's there, so you could just react silently and say, yes, that's true. That's true of me. Your complaint summarizes itself when you meet a crisis, find yourself out in the sea, by you asking indignantly and fearfully, don't you know who I am? What right have you to treat me that way? Don't you know who I am? I'm someone who has a right to be treated better by you. Why do you expect anyone to treat you right? They can't do it. There's no way they can do it. All they can do is do to you what they're doing to themselves, and what they're doing to themselves is mutilating themselves. Now you get rid altogether of that phrase, which now can be a conscious guide to you, and you notice how you are always phrasing in your own phrasing, but I've summarized, I put it all together in just a few words. Don't you know who I am? I should be respected. Why didn't you buy my products and make my business a success? Don't you know who I am? I deserve it. Look how much I worked into that business. I went to school for years to learn. Don't you know who I am? Oh, forget it. Any definition you give yourself is false. Any description that you want to get someone else to give to you like you're a nice fellow, and all that is useless. Gives you nothing. When the question, the demand, don't you know who I am, is no longer existent in you, you are no longer a delirious derelict clinging to the wreckage out in the sea, but you're on solid ground. You can look back. By the way, then you will be able to look back and see exactly why those people are still out there. They're saying, don't you know who I am? You owe me that bit of extra wood that you've got so I can have 4 pieces of wood and maybe I can survive a little longer. Come on, who wants to survive in this world the way it is? You want survival? Don't you want to take off? How few human beings, and I tell you it's 1 in a million, ever think of the simple thought, instead of adjusting to life, to get rid of life. The only known life, the habitual life. The life that clutches at you constantly and throws you into terror. Is it a shock to you? Please let it be a shock to you that you want more, that you really want more of the kind of life you now have. You think that's your insurance. You think that's your guarantee. You're quite sure that if you reach a certain point in accumulation, if you can steal enough wreckage from other people, or you con them out of it, lie to them, and get enough lumber around for it, you could, listen to the madness of this. If you can con enough people and get enough pieces of wreckage, you could tie a raft there together, and you could float permanently adrift at sea. Sir, when you make an insane statement like that, would you please see that you made an insane statement like that? What are you going to do out on that raft, drifting around? You're not supposed to be there. You're supposed to be on land. You're not supposed to be on earth. You're supposed to be up in heaven. Can't you see the illogic of you grabbing and grasping and wheedling and lying and even think what you call praying, P-R-E-Y-N-G, in order to get a secure place for yourself among the wreckage? The transformation must come into your mind that is shocking, astonishing. The change must come into your mind by which you gasp as you see what has been explained to you. But you want more. I can't believe it. I've wanted more misery, and I fought, and I cheated, and I schemed, and I was a charlatan in order to get more of this life. Guess what? You got it. You got exactly what you asked for. You're living right now, in this room, seated in this room right now. You are living with what you have demanded to live with. How do you like your choice? Now I know what you're thinking. 1, how do I break out? Wrong question. Because it's based on the fact that you think you're there to save. You always do that. And I've told you over and over and over, and I'll tell you one more time, and probably 1,000 times more, there's no one there to be saved. All you have to do is be saved from the delusion that there's someone there to be saved. Then you're on land, then you're not in the wreckage anymore. the way you think and scheme now, let me tell you what you really want. You want to have the biggest pile of raft wreckage in the ocean. The other man has 10 pieces of lumber. You want to have 15. The more he gets, the more you want, and you compete with each other. So to be king of the wreckage out on the ocean, I've described it perfectly, and you know it. Your thinking has to be replaced with seeing, with understanding. The greed and the false pleasure in greed must be transcended. You must just simply look around and see that I have described perfectly your position in this life. That you have, absurd is not strong enough word, absurd ambitions. You have ridiculous aims, nonsensical places to go to and things to do. And all the time, you do not give intelligent consideration to the fact that you are a suffering human being. Now, come on. So you get the biggest raft in the rough sea. You've got 80 pieces of lumber on your raft, and you're the king of the ocean. All the rest of the people only can cling to 1 or 2 pieces. How do you feel having the biggest raft on the ocean? You feel sick. Of course you feel sick. You're in the wrong place. You got salt water, not pure water. You can't drink that salt water. You sense that you're in the wrong place, but you don't want to leave it. That's it. I said, and I'll rephrase it in a different way, a consciousness, a seeing of your suffering of any kind, like your hatred of that man in the next raft over there. He's looking over at that closest piece of lumber on your raft. He's going to try to snatch it away from you. And oh, how you hate him. And the reason you hate him, the reason you must hate him, is so that you can stay alive as a hater. Because if you weren't a hater, who would you be? Or if you weren't greedy, if you couldn't call yourself greedy, which you'd call under the name of proper ambition, of course, then who would you be? You don't need to be anyone. You don't have to think about being someone. What you have to do is see through the trick that your thoughts are playing on you, making you stay on the raft in the secret agony of it and making all those dumb errors. What you have to see is that you're in terrific conflict. And the great majority of your feelings and thoughts are on the side of, let me stay where I am, so that I can continue to yell out to those other derelicts in the ocean, don't you know who I am? I have a right to survive. I must survive! I must survive! Anyone who screams that will murder any other human being for one little tiny stick. Not only will, but does. Go beyond thinking of the physical destruction of insane human beings who commit crimes, for example, and think of the delirious derelicts who commit psychological crimes by their sick behavior, by loving to be haters. Just think of that type of crime and realize that anyone who is a psychological criminal will be continued to be punished by remaining where he is. He will never, never, never be able to rise above his sickness of wandering on the raft and find his way back home to the mainland. He won't be able to do that. I don't want any of you listening to this talk to go any further into your statement, don't you know who I am? I have never been treated right by anyone. Well, for heaven's sake, what do you expect of human beings? You think they should be better than you? How do you treat people? That's how they treat you. And it's not going to be any different. And only when you no longer treat them badly will you know how to avoid people who treat you badly and how to handle them. You can't escape them physically. You're in the zoo, but you can learn to be a lion tamer instead of being one of the victims that the lion claws out at. Absurd ambitions center around a false belief in you being a separate, independent self. There is no such thing at all. And if you want to discover it for yourself, all you have to do is to want to discover it for yourself. Come on. What should you care what position you occupy in this world? What should you care what you do? Make a few dollars, earn your living. What else is important? Nothing is important but you discovering who you are. Got time for a little story. Our two angels, veteran angel and apprentice angel, they were standing at the gate of heaven taking applicants who came up. And as each individual came up to the gate, the veteran angel and apprentice angel questioned him and said, well, now when you go in here, what position do you think you should occupy? And a man who was important in finances on earth, he said, well, I've been a money maker all my life. I worked hard and I've learned all about laws of finances. So if I get to go into heaven, I believe I ought to be one of the head bankers up here. Financial typhoon. A woman came up and she said, I think I ought to be the head of a nice family, like I've always been. I love people. That's my big objective in life, is to not only love people, but to love more people. Heaven help them, right? A clergyman came up, and the angels asked him, what position you think you ought to occupy in here? And he said, I think I ought to be an archbishop. And I have to interrupt this story because there's something that I'm going to have to tell you about the apprentice angel, who isn't too bright at times. He misses his harp lessons. But I have to tell you what really happened. I was undecided whether to tell you, but I decided to tell you after. When the minister came up and said that he'd like to be an archbishop, the apprentice angel smiled at him and said, oh, that's easy, sir. Just stand outside at McDonald's. And you'll become an archbishop. Okay? The veteran angel gave him a sidelong glance, of course, reprovingly. So that's the way it went. And everybody had their stories about what they were entitled to. Do you see the connection between that phrase and don't you know who I am? I'm entitled to your respect, and if you don't give it to me, I'll bop you. You think that isn't true? People, if you can believe this variety of insanity, I'll get your respect by being vicious to you, by domineering. You'll respect me, at least on the surface, even if I have to hit you to do it. So finally, after a long parade of self-seekers had come up, finally one man come up and he was asked the same question. Well, what position do you think you should occupy inside the kingdom of heaven? Oh, this is what we want to do. We want to give the answer he gave. He said, sirs, I don't care what position I occupy, just please let me in. You know what that means? It means that on earth, this last man had done some work, inner work. He'd prepared himself. He understood what all the others didn't. He understood the nature of heaven. He understood that heaven wasn't earth. It's a different place. It wasn't like him and his nature. And having acquired this insight, he was able to go up there with the right answer. And of course, the angels rejoiced and opened the gates and let him in. We are dedicated here in this room and out of this room. We are dedicated to getting a little bit of heaven inside of us while we're here on earth, so that we always give the right answer and are always admitted to a little more heaven on earth. Now, for you to get the lesson in this, you're going to have to put everything together in the talk, but especially you're going to have to understand your fearful self-protection of your foolish and really non-existent self-images, self-pictures. That's all they are. Picture of you on the wall is not you, it's a picture of you. If you believe it and think it's you, then you better get some help. But you have fears of letting go of your images of yourself because you have now labeled yourself as reasonably safe. Not the happiest man on earth, but could be worse. And I'd rather have a half a loaf than no bread at all. What you don't know, and what I'm going to tell you, is that half a loaf that you have is made of sawdust. Sawdust bread. How's it taste? Pretty yucky, huh? We're talking about your daily thoughts, actions, whatever happens to you during the day, like between 10 and 11. We're talking about the way you really feel. Sawdust doesn't satisfy. It's awful. Tastes awful, doesn't it? Don't be afraid to see that. Breakthrough right now, while I'm talking to you. I don't want you to ever again believe that pain is a good thing. I don't ever want you to think that agony is a necessity for your existence. What kind of existence is when all you have is sawdust instead of real bread, salt water instead of pure fresh water? We're showing you how to not have your present existence so that you can have what God in heaven wants to give you. You've tasted the so-called pleasures and joys and successes of this world. You've had them all. You've had a little money. You've had a few romances. You've had a little sex. You've had a lot of traveling, running around. Oh, and all those grand plans you've had. Stop them right now. I will personally guarantee you, if you drop all your self-images, you will not perish. The images will perish. They'll fade out. It won't make sense to you anymore to swim out on the wreckage, to be out there on the ocean. And you'll have a new pleasure. Ooh, I guarantee you this too. You know what the new pleasure is? Abandoning the wreckage of your life that you've been clinging to and swimming toward shore. I'll tell you why. Because with every stroke, every effort to understand, to study, with every stroke, your visual eyes, in the case of actual swimming, and your spiritual eyes, inwardly, will prove to you, and your assurance will grow with every stroke, that the land is there and you are really heading for it. That alone is what makes life worthwhile, and you will never, never, never find anything else. You've tried. Give it up. Do it. Come on. Make the change. Make the switch. Get excited, rightly excited, over the prospect of, for the first time, being able to distinguish between pain and authentic pleasure, spiritual pleasure. There's such a thing, of course there is. And I just told you what it is. It's the pleasure of knowing that you do not have to be a victim of you anymore. You don't have to look around to anyone for anything anymore. All you have to do is turn your back on the wreck and start swimming. Now your life becomes altogether different. The attractions, the false, stupid attractions of fighting with the other drifters out there, you thought you were going to win something over them and be the biggest drifter on them. All that is seen for what it actually is. Insanity. And dangerous for the soul. When you're swimming, you now begin to understand what it means to have a soul, because you're beginning to acquire it. You didn't have it out there. All you had was a mad mind, calling it a soul. And there are plenty of religious people out on those rafts, believe me. And you're abandoning all that. And then comes, it doesn't take very many strokes, something that you will never be able to forget. Thank heaven for that. You'll never be able to forget that you are truly, truly beginning to do God's will here on earth. You're now bringing the heavenly down to earth, which you can do, and which you must do. And there isn't a single person, there's no circumstance, not poverty, not growing older. There is absolutely nothing that can take away this absolute guarantee, this assurance from you. It is yours because you allowed, it is yours and yours all the time because you allowed heaven to give it to you. Our time is up. Good night. We must switch from being led by the mind to being led by the Spirit. We're going to talk today about being led, about following and following intelligently. If you'll search your past a little bit, you will see that following, being led by someone or something, is a part of the general regular human experience. We're led into our school lessons in adding 2 and 2, or learning how to drive the car or conduct the business. We are led into tens of thousands of daily tasks, and rightfully so. We must have factual knowledge in order to function properly in our social and physical lives. But have you noticed something else? Have you noticed that regardless of the many, many years that you went to college or stayed home and read books, hundreds of books, and had discussions with other people about this world and about business, about finances, about human relations, have you noticed, and I want you to, that no matter how weighty, how overwhelming is the knowledge you collect, that there's something missing. You know exactly what to do when that machine breaks down in the factory. You know exactly how to guide that big truck across the highways of the nation. No problem. You know how to plant your spring garden. Easy. And think of what a marvelous collection machine the mind is, to have these millions and millions of facts ready to snatch for practical daily use. It has everything, and yet we feel something lacking. Isn't that a great clue already? That we've got to look beyond our collections, our memories, look beyond our skills that are called skills by this world. Isn't it clear that something has to be done about the emptiness? And what has to be done is to, now here's your first big leap to take tonight. What must be done is an absolute, final realization that thinking cannot solve the problem of emptiness. It can only solve the problem of fixing the automobile or cooking the dinner. But when I cook the dinner well or repair the car well, there's an awful lot of thinking about that gets me into trouble. I want that dinner to be the best my company has ever tasted. And I want to prove that I can go out in that car with a wrench and a hammer, fix that machine in 10 minutes. I want my neighbor to see how clever I am. And I never noticed, and I want you to notice, that the flood of thinking always carries a false addition to it. That addition being the fact that I think I must impress the neighbor or the company. So what we have to do is to stop the thought, I can repair the car. All right. I know how to do that. I've been taught. I've been led how to repair the car. So I can go out and do that, and I go out and do it, and that's the end of it. I don't think about it. I don't resent the car for breaking down. I either do it, or if I can't do it, I have someone else do it. But I don't get involved in it with my false life. Increasingly, you must see the need for using thought where it belongs and not trying to do more with it than it can give you, because it can't give you any more than how to drive the truck or cook the dinner. Nothing more than that. If you realize that, then you will begin to get a higher insight into what it means to be led by the Spirit of truth. Self-guidance blocks spiritual guidance. Self-guidance is the mind taking things that doesn't belong to it, appropriating it, and saying, I can do it. All right, you can do it, you prove it. You prove that you can stop being angry when someone says something you didn't like. Prove it by not getting mad. You prove that your mind is the king of the universe by never again getting depressed. Can't be done, right? All right, now we're all being led somewhere. That's, again, a part of the human experience. And what we want to do is to make sure that we're being led in the right direction. The right direction being up, vertical, not horizontal. I just went through that. You can collect 1 billion more facts than you already have, and you won't be 1 ounce more equipped to get rid of depression or to stop it in the first place. Knowledge is horizontal, spiritual aspiration is vertical. Now I'll tell you what your difficulty is. You're not weary enough of this world. Isn't it a curious contradiction? In the spiritual world, the more weary you become, the more happy you become. But the weariness must precede the happiness and the clear thinking and being led. Because if you're weary enough, you will stop and think about what you've heard in this talk, and you will think, that is absolutely correct. I've never been able to think my way out of anything. As a matter of fact, the more I think, the worse it gets. And there's increasing punishment, sorrow in getting punished all the more. So here's a lesson and an exercise for you. I want you to think of being led as a gift. Well, of course it is. Look. As a matter of fact, everything any human being has is a gift from the Spirit. Where did you get your physical body? Did you create it? Did you ask it to come into being? Wasn't it a gift to you? The gifts that go with it, the gift of speech, the gift of being able to think and see your way around. All of these physical items we identify with, and unfortunately we don't see them as gifts from God, but as something that not only we had a right to, but we have a right to do anything we want with it, and that's true, by the way. All hurting human beings want to get hurt, to bring that point out and clear it up. Whatever state you are in, seated in this room tonight, that is the condition you have requested. And the request is a part of you following yourself. And what is yourself? Nothing but a big bag, thoughts, ideas, beliefs. And you don't know how to stop following yourself, and I'm telling you tonight how to do it. All you can see is what you can see, and all you can see are your memories. I said you have to get wary of that. You have to lose confidence in yourself. What a beautiful thing it is. It's the only way to go. To no longer Have confidence in yourself the way you are now. Why do you try? You don't have to. You think you have to. You really believe that you have to hang on to your life, and not only that, but you say, whoever put me here on this world sure made me an imperfect human being. I'd better improve on what was given to me. No. What you have to do is grow into knowledge of first your imperfection, and that knowledge will bring then the higher perfection of God to you. A gift. When a pole vaulter is given a pole, what does he use it for? To vault over the pole, to go a little higher. It's a gift to him, and so are these teachings, so are these truths. Something that is given to you for one purpose, which is to use. But you can't sit back in your life and just expect your definition of a miracle to come to you. And that's what you're doing. You really are. You have your definition of what a miracle should be. Thereby, you lose the real thing. A real miracle, the miracle of being led properly, being led by the Spirit, occurs when this weariness reaches its peak, or rather its depths. And you, instead of going into any negative state, accusation, you don't even know who you're accusing really, but you've got to strike out, and so you do it. Instead of accusing, you get to notice that the false leader of your life doesn't want to let you go, and so you let yourself go from it. We've talked a little bit about the leading of the Spirit. How about the leading of the anti-Spirit? Oh, how powerful, how tricky. It knows just exactly how to lie to you. For example, the lie that you have self-independence. And that lie, if believed in, will cause you to think that it's a disgrace, that it's shameful to follow something other than your own mind, and I'm not going to do it. And all the disastrous cliches come up into the mind. I know what I'm doing. Don't you tell me that I'm wrong. Please leave me alone. No. The Spirit of truth will leave any man or woman alone who demands that that be his condition. Now, since you're very closely involved in following yourself, I want you to see the full significance of what that means. And what it means is that you're always unsure of yourself and your position. I told you, and I'll repeat, every human being is always going somewhere. Right now, we're all going somewhere at this moment internally. Will you please question where you're going? The questioning of the direction you're taking will allow you to lift your spiritual eyes so that you can very clearly detect, understand, and act upon the entity that you are following. And who are you following? Well, we can break that down into several classifications. First of all, you're following yourself. But what is yourself? I told you it was a collection of nonsense. It's also a very evil force that imposes itself upon your mind without your understanding of it? Can you detect, therefore, the fact that you were going someplace and divided about it because the arrogant part says, I know where I'm going and what I'm doing, and don't you tell me that I don't know where I'm going. That is speaking. That's the false self-leading. But there's another voice that knows better than that, and that is the Spirit of truth, which we want to make alive within us. If you're following a guide out of the forest and he says, I know how to get out, and instead of seeing telephone poles and some camps off in the distance, instead of seeing signs of getting back home, you see only more rugged mountains and deep gorges. Wouldn't you begin to question the man who said, I can lead you out? Why don't you question yourself and the self-leading that you have given to yourself without questioning it? I want you to question it. Where there is any kind of confusion, or there's any kind of hardness, any kind of distress, know absolutely that you have chosen to be led by your mind instead by the Spirit of truth. When that is clear, you don't have to do anything. No, don't you dare do anything, because if you do something, you'll choose out of your mind and spoil the whole thing. You're following that man who made you pay him a lot of money, maybe, to lead you out of the mountains where you were lost. And you look at him, and you see the doubt on his face when he doesn't know you're looking at him. And you finally realize that he's just as lost as you are, and therefore he's trying to capitalize on it, hoping that getting the money is going to maybe in some way take away, block out the knowledge that he's lost. And you look at him, and that very knowledge that he doesn't know what he's doing is the knowledge for your final deliverance. Look at yourself and see that you're following the you who doesn't know the way out. And is it clear to you? You don't have to choose. You have to choose as long as you're following the man. The false man, he says, we're going to go left here, we're going to go up here, we're going to go down there. You have to choose. Well, I'll choose to follow him whichever way he goes. Now you don't have any choice anymore, because you're leaving the level of choices of intellectual selection. You're leaving that. And the very knowledge that you're going wrong makes you go right. You have no friends in this world. Human, mental, organizational ideas. You have no friends at all to follow, and don't need them. You think you do. You say, I've got to follow the past, which you are. And I've got to follow the advice I get on my finances or whatever. I've got to follow that, because if I don't follow that, what will happen to me? What will happen to you if you do follow it is everything bad. Let me make a little bit of a strong switch here. Think about Judgment Day, which is right now. And now the next Judgment Day is already here. And the next Judgment Day. The creator of this universe, of this human being and that human being, the creator of the trees, the creator of life, that is the only one you have to account to. That is the only one that you have to look at and explain which way you're going, who you're following. I bring this up because I know how, especially when we're younger, especially when we're older, take your choice, wherever we are and whatever we're doing, we put ourselves under the game of follow the leader. We play the game. And that leader, who is equally lost, will play games, his old little side game, whoever that leader may be, someone in your life, someone whom you think is out of this world and can help you. You get to feeling, quote mark, comfortable, end quote mark, with that person. And you get to feeling that there is a great almighty heavenly power, God. There's that. But while I'm here on earth, you're talking to yourself, muttering to yourself wrongly. While there is God, I accept that, okay? But there are also, in this world, lesser gods. And if you know all the troubles I've seen, you'll know why I need to follow as many of them as I can. That close friend, acquaintance, relative, anything. I'm not talking about financial advisors now. I'm talking about someone who has a psychological effect on your close inner life. So you're following yourself into the wilderness in the first place by telling yourself that, okay, I understand, God is up there, but I'm down here, and I need to follow that person, or that group, or that book, or that belief, that source. I've got to have help for the level I'm on. Oh, how can I get this point through to you? I'm going to try and try. There are no intermediates between you and God. And if you put them there, you'll suffer from them. They will use you just as you're using them. And they will threaten you if you leave them, if you don't need them anymore. Your own lack of living and thriving from the Spirit of truth, following the Spirit of truth, your lack of that has forced you into grab bag substitutes, in which any old port in a storm will do. And you justify it, which is the same as lying about it, by saying, look, I know there's the Spirit of truth that I should follow. I know there's a God in his heaven, but all's not right with my world. And while I'm learning how to follow the Spirit of truth, while I'm a learner, I've got to depend on anyone, including my own memories, anything or anyone who offers me assistance, who can help me relieve my pain and heartache over being empty. I've got to do that. And so you convince yourself how sad, how terrible. You convince yourself that the postponement of the day of decision is a good thing. What decision? You're postponing the sweeping aside, all of it, of everything that stands between you and God that pretends to be a right leader. Now remember, when I talk about a leader, I'm talking about beliefs, I'm talking about other people. I'm talking about you looking at the world, even such a thing as entertainment. You believe, as millions of people do, follow the football game, follow the latest musical on Broadway, follow avidly the TV guide, follow that, and maybe one day, by depending on the temporary and the temporal, one day I'll be able to transcend it and find God and be at peace at last. You're lying to yourself. You're postponing the action that you must take now. That action being to sweep the room clear, sweep the mind clear of everything that you say will lead me out if I follow it. How come you're not out? How come you're still in the wilderness? Because you have chosen to believe in substitutes for God Almighty. Well, and guess who the substitutes are? Everything that is noisy, everything that is deceitful, everything that seems to give you a place to go and things to do. You are playing, please listen to what I'm telling you. You're playing follow the leader with yourself. All the time deceiving yourself and saying, I'm going somewhere, and if I pause along the road just a little bit to rest with that other strong human being, if I pause to rest with him, with my spouse, if I pause to rest, what's wrong with that? What's wrong with that is that you're putting something before truth. That's what's wrong with it. And you know very well that pausing by the wayside instead of going on up to the top of the mountain, you know very well at the moment you do it that stopping for that so-called friend, so-called strength, so-called comfort, you know it's the wrong thing to do, and I want you to know it so explosively that you'll never do it again. By the way, take a look at anything you're depending on, and seeing how angry you can get toward it. You'll see how angry you do get toward it for not giving you enough. The very fact that you're following something outside yourself, the very fact that you're depending on it, means that you don't see an essential element in spiritual therapy. There is you, and there is that great organization. How can they be wrong? There's 1 million people belong to that organization. Yeah, 1 million wrong people. If it was 5 million, it would be 5 million wrong people. There's insignificant me, and if I join those 1 million people in that group, I won't be insignificant anymore. I'll be part of the conquering crusade that's going to save the world, or that's going to have a lot of fun. I'm poor. I'm going to find something to follow. And they all seem to be having so much fun. They're doing things. Oh, come on, when are you going to wake up? When are you going to be able to see the inside instead of the outside? That's the most basic and simple truth you can do, and you don't do it. You don't do it because you're part of it and you want to see through yourself. If you see through yourself, you'll see through them. You don't want to see through yourself. Oh, talk about petty idols. That's what dominates your mind. Leaning, what are you leaning on? What are you worshiping? One of the worst is to worship your suffering, by the way, and your confusion. Do you know that you worship your confusion? You want the confusion to be there because if the clouds began to drift by a little bit, you'd be able to see that you're a phony. You want to be someone who's depending on someone else so that you can be someone who's depending on someone else. Oh, I'm weak, but he's strong. I'm nobody, but he's something. Oh, this is one of the most hazardous perils that religious people get involved in. They've got their idea about heaven, about salvation, about spirituality. They've got their idea about salvation, but know nothing of the real product. Why? Because they're depending on their ideas, upon their theological dogmas, on the repetition of phrases, on mechanical devotions, marching down the aisle, carrying candles. Depending on an outward appearance, in short, of spirituality, and saying, that puts me in contact with God. Absolutely not. And you must have the courage to know it. If you were godless, I want you to do just one thing. Know you are. Which, by the way, you are. Now, are you going to sit there and have the nerve to argue with that, to deny it, to protest it? Don't you dare. When I said, don't you dare, that was a nice thing for you to hear. That was a pleasant thing for you to hear. Because if you obey it, follow the truth, then, that split, that division, that going two ways at one time, that will vanish. You'll be one person instead of, well, I'll let you guess. How many? 500? How many mind changers in the room? You know, whole wheat toast or white toast? Mighty decision. Even that throws you. You know why you can't choose between the two? I'll tell you why. Whole wheat toast and white. You know why you can't choose instantly between the two? Because there are two types of people in this world. People who believe in whole wheat bread and people who believe in white bread. And both have imposed their doctrines, their wheaty doctrines on you. And you listen, and you decided to go along with a group that seemed to be having the most fun. So you went around with the white bread people. Yeah, but one day you were all alone, all the white bread people, you don't know what happened to them, they disappeared. And one day you were lonely and languishing, and you decided to take a walk in the park, and what should you see there? Group, 500 people there, having a big picnic, fun. The kids were yelling, the music, the people were dancing the polka out in the grass. And guess what they were all eating? Whole wheat bread. You decide to switch, huh? You go over there, and as a sign of your repentance, we might as well go ahead with it. We have a little fun. You go out to your car and you quickly shake all the white bread out of the wrapper, and you bow your head as a symbol of repentance and sorrow, and you go up and you walk in and hold the empty white bread wrapper in front of them all. And they, you know how it usually goes in a movie, is you walk, and you're the star now, remember that. You walk down the path, and you suddenly come out in the open where all the 500 people, first one man looks over, here you're holding it up, and then a woman over there looks over, and the orchestra lead over there cuts off the musicians. And the altar, See how we dramatize? They all, pretty soon everyone is looking at you, and there's absolute silence in that whole park, and you're standing there holding up the wrapper, and they all begin to nod. They understand that you're sorry for having made the wrong choice. Pretty soon a man, obviously is a red ribbon across the front. He's an ambassador of the whole wheat bread legion, and he comes over and he nods and he says, "Sir," he says to you, "Sir, welcome back home." Everybody cheers. The orchestra strikes up, and you're home again. The trouble is, the next day, you go back to the park and they're all gone. And the white breaders are there again. See, how do we get into this anyway? Well, we were talking anyway about following white bread and whole wheat bread. We were talking about following mere ideas. Where did we get them? From the experiences that was just described in the park. Don't be afraid to be without yourself. You're not white bread or whole wheat bread. You're neither. Think of all the descriptions, both good and bad, both favorable and insulting, that you give to yourself. I tell you, you are not one of those descriptions. And you never were. But you wanted to be someone. You insisted on being someone. Because why should I remain a nobody when there are so many somebodies out there having fun in the park? They're not having fun at all. And I alluded to that a few minutes ago. I know that you don't really realize how miserable everyone is. Everyone is. So what sense does it make to follow them? You follow them, you're going to get the results they got from following themselves. Now, a follower and the leader are two things, right? That's division. That's apartness. That is not oneness. That is not wholeness. That's two things. What you're afraid of is that if you stop following both the whole wheat crowd and the white bread crowd, you're afraid that if you stop both, see, you're willing to put one away as long as you can have the other. Because you call yourself either one you want, or you could switch anytime you want. Anytime it looks better to switch, you switch. But you're afraid to not you're afraid to live without both of them. No white bread people, no whole wheat bread people. Why? Which is pretty good stuff. Listen to it. If you don't follow either one of them, if there's nothing to follow, then there's no follower. Hooray. Now, you don't say that, hooray. I've said it. You say, wait just a minute. Who will I be? Don't ask me to give up my life. Some life switching from 2 bread wrappers back and forth. Some life. That's exactly what you're doing. Why don't you try it? Why don't you try not following anything whatever? What you'll prove, what an amazing revelation this will be. What you'll prove is that there never, ever, ever, ever in your life ever was a follower there in the first place. You built it all up out of your fantasies, out of your fictions, out of your insecurities, out of the sick information that everybody gave you when you were a child and older. You followed the wrong leader. And eventually, you see, that you must stop following all human leaders, because if there's a you there has to be an exterior leader. Cancel exterior leaders, you cancel the follower, now you're one with truth. Now you're following, and now we have to switch the meaning of the word follow. Now you're following the Spirit of truth. But it isn't you that's following the Spirit of truth. You can't do that. You don't want to do that. You'll never be able to do that. Only truth can follow truth. The human can't follow it. I know what you're thinking. You're saying, well, come on. You're confusing me. No, I'm clearing the confusion away in your mind. Because all you can do is think yourself into repeated existence, even while I'm talking. And you're afraid of the emptiness. What's going to happen to you? I tell you, what your false nature calls emptiness is only itself, not you. Not real you, not who you really are. And you are the person, and over there, and over there, and over there, you are the person who can make this experience come true personally. If you give up the false gods of your false mind, you will know exactly what has been explained here tonight. You will also know exactly what to do with your present life, which is throw out all the imposters, throw them out, get rid of all the egotistical notions that you have, which will put an end to your striving, and above that, you'll find what is real and everlasting. Our time came up very fast, so good night.